Hey guys, how's it going? Sam here, and today we're going to be talking about lasso painting. The pieces are scrolling across now, they probably seem a bit random, but all will be explained. So let's get into it. So my main objective for this week was to focus on mark making or being better with my brushes. So I didn't want, in the previous pieces you've seen, I've explained a few times that I use the term noodle, which is awful, it doesn't mean anything. But basically what I mean by that is I use too small a brush, I'm adding too much detail with a tiny brush because I'm not really sure how to lay down better brush marks. So with this I wanted to be better with that, I wanted to be more concise, use less marks to create the final outcome. And one process that I've used in the past a couple of times but I wanted to become more proficient at was using the Lasso Tool. I apologise if I'm saying that wrong, a lot of Americans might say lasso, maybe? But anyway, I'm going to say that, so, you know, shout at me in the comments if I'm wrong. The idea is you create basic shapes using the lasso and then fill them in with a brush. Now I've basically used a couple of techniques here. I've actually bought Sparth's brushes, and that is actually used in the final piece. I haven't used it in the first two because I wanted a comparison. So for these first two pieces I'm just using my standard brushes, making all of my selections with lasso and then filling in inside those shapes. Now what this does, it forces you to think in big objects, it forces you to think in big shapes. You can't, it's harder at least to noodle, there's that term again, it's harder to noodle with the lasso because you're having to select the shape, so you're having to think about it, you're not just throwing brush marks down hoping it ends up making a shape. You actively select it and you fill it in. Now one positive I found with the Lasso tool, I found really useful, is if you create a shape and you draw from the outside of the mask, it creates a hard edge obviously because you've got the shape of the lasso, but if you draw into the center and release the pressure, it creates a soft edge. So if you use a brush that's like a chalk brush for example, you get this kind of nice chalk pattern with a hard shape edge around the outside. Now that could be really good, obviously anyone that's painted a lot of faces, you know you get hard and soft edges, and it's quite important to consider, and that's something I'm terrible at. And this kind of helped that, it kind of forces you, it almost does it automatically, it's hard not to, as long as you don't fill in the whole shape, then it does it for you. So that's really nice, it creates a really nice effect, so I'm enjoying that as part of the process. Now these pieces, they are thumbnails really, they're not final pieces, so this piece you're looking at right now probably doesn't make sense to you, there's not that much information. I mean, these big tall structures, are they buildings, are they rocks? I wanted them to be kind of buildings, but I haven't really shown any information to say that, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with them not being final pieces. Each one took less than 2 hours, and I definitely think I can do those faster now if I had a better idea of kind of what I was creating, because this was an exploration, so I wasn't expecting it to be my fastest piece I was going to create. So you may have seen that I tried to incorporate a caravan design into the piece, so I started blocking that out, but I realised it would probably take up too much time and effort to try to make it look like a caravan, it would need more detail, and it just wasn't working for me, so I decided to go in a slightly different direction and change it. I found on Pinterest this inspiration for it's like an Asian boat, and really cool looking design, so I kind of took that as inspiration to create that basic shape that you can see. Kind of the idea is that it's stuck in the sand until the tide comes back in. Obviously, as I said, that these are explorations as thumbnails, not final pieces, so I'm not really that bothered about the idea changing because there really wasn't an idea in the first place. So if I did another piece later on, that would be a more detailed version where I'd really knuckle down a narrative, an idea that could develop into a final piece. So you can see the final one coming up here. You can see the kind of the main thing that I like about this piece is the brushwork, the kind of solid shapes that you're getting in the piece. It creates a nice style. So with the second piece, I basically want it to be the same theme as the first. So I used the same colour palette, I used the same idea. And I wanted a close-up version of that in this second piece, but I pushed it in more of a kind of sci-fi fancy route. It doesn't look like a boat anymore, it looks like almost like a destroyed ship, which I'm fine with. Again, I wasn't bothered about a narrative, I wanted it to be a thumbnail to create a cool composition and test the process. these aren't portfolio pieces. Like I said, they only take a couple of hours, so they're kind of quick pieces to work out how to lay down marks, not how to create the perfect painting, so just bear that in mind. But yeah, I'm basically using the same process, same brushes. There's that kind of chalk pattern. You'll see on the floor, the bright orange, you can see that kind of fading off. It creates that nice chalky pattern, which is what I was talking about a minute ago with the hard and soft edges. One thing I did find with this process using my own brushes, because I'm quite used to my brushes and they can be changed in size without the attributes changing, I could make them quite small, which resulted in me being a little bit fussy with how many brush marks I make, especially in the buildings in the background. There's quite a lot of probably unnecessary detail. I could have probably gone simpler with them. It's definitely better than other pieces that I've shown on this channel for that. They're not overly fussy because they are so quick, but more so than the final piece, which you'll see shortly. I found using the Lasso Tool, you're not precious over any shape. You go in with this mentality of, oh, I can change that really quickly, and you kind of block over it. Most of the time, I'm using very few layers. The only layers I'm really using in this piece is to separate the background and the foreground, just to make it slightly easier if I need to cut something out. And I've done it a few times where I've been like, oh, that's wrong, you know, warp it, distort it, repaint over it entirely with a lasso. If you actually look at each detail, the value changes aren't that different. I'm not creating, you know, really realistic value ranges. I'm creating a stylized piece. It reminds me a little bit of Ian McKay's work. I think that's how you say his name. And obviously Sparth's work I mentioned earlier on. Obviously nowhere near as good as those guys, but it's that kind of style. And I think that is the only issue with this process, is that it has a definite style. You know, if you're painting with the lasso, it's going to look a certain way, and if you don't like that look, then there's no point doing it. The only thing I would say about that though is that you don't have to do a full painting in it like I have here. You can use it just at the start of the process, just to block shapes out, just to kind of create an interesting composition where you're not worried too much about the design of it, and then work over the top of it and kind of get rid of some of the harsh lines that this process creates. So that might be worth investigating. I might do that in the future to see what the kind of results are with that process. So with the final piece, I went in a completely different direction, which seems kind of random, but I didn't want to create the same piece and just do a slightly better version. As soon as I started, you can see that there is colour variation in the first brush I used. It's like a triangular brush, which is awesome. So this is from Sparth's brush pack that you can buy online. I think he does give you some PSDs to look through, which I haven't yet, and some custom shapes, which I want to investigate. I've never used custom shapes in a painting. I've seen some artists use it really effectively, so that would definitely be worth a go. And I'm kind of using the lasso here in a similar way, I think, so I would like to use those. But so far I've just used the brushes. You don't get a huge amount, but the ones you get are really high quality. They're really useful. Now, I see a lot of artists, especially people that educate, kind of create discussions online, such as YouTube, that discuss brushes. A lot of artists say, oh, what brushes are you using? Can I buy those brushes? Where are you getting your brushes from? And the artists get quite annoyed with that because they get asked it constantly, and the argument is always the brush doesn't do the painting. You could use any brush to create a painting, which is true. I completely agree with. You know, this painting doesn't necessarily hold up as well as a lot of other paintings, and obviously Sparth can create a way better painting with the same brushes than me. But what I would say, brushes do make you think differently about painting. So these brushes, they're really textured. You tend to use them quite big because that's the way you get the most out of them. So it changes the way you think about a painting. So if you compare this one to the first two, the shapes are way bigger. It's way less detailed, but I'm actually okay with that. I think it comes out with quite a good result. So yes, brushes, they don't make the painting, but they might change the way you address them. So it's definitely worth considering. It's the same thing with this lasso. That's the reason I wanted to do it. It basically forces you to think differently about your painting. And that's what I wanted to do. I was very stuck in a rut of the way I worked. So I wanted to change the process and see if I get the most out of it. So, I mean, that's it really. That's the main thing I wanted to discuss. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you use the lasso in the same way I do? Obviously, it doesn't have to be used for the entire process. You can use it for the first blocking out stage and then get rid of it and carry on detailing more with a normal brush. But I'm definitely going to incorporate it more into my process moving forward. And I guess that's it. That's the point I wanted to make. It's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, trying something new, having fun with it, which I really did. I really enjoyed the process. And I think I got a pretty good result. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is it something you've done in the past? Do you think you're going to try it? Is there another way I can use it that will be better? So that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you in the next one.